Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is Zevachim Kuf Tet Zayin, and we are at the bottom of Kuf Tet Vav. Let me share my screen and we'll get started. So, yesterday we quoted a brisa in which we're told a variety of rules that regarding prior to the Mishkan, and we specifically were told that at that time all kosher animals were valid to be sacrificed, and so we're now going to go through that brisa and provide sources and a basis and ask questions in connection with with many of the lines. So again, we're third line from the bottom of Kuftes Vav Amabet, middle of the line, Amar Mar. So we said, the master said, quoting from the Brisa, Kol Ksherim Lahakriv, everything is valid to be offered as a sacrifice. Minohanimili, how do I know that any kind of animal could be brought as a sacrifice? So Amar Rav Huna to Amar Kra, Vayivin Noach Mizbech Lashem. Noach built an altar for God. Vayikach Mikol HaBehemah Torah, and he took from every clean animal, Mikol HaOf HaTahor, and from every clean bird, Behemah, and the Mesoras Hashas and the Shita Mekubetzes adds the Ov, Kimashma'o, that those animals, namely a bird and domesticated animals, those are included with the terms behema and oaf. That behema refers to domesticated animal, and oaf refers to a bird, to fowl. So chaya bichlal behema. And you know what? Wild animals can sometimes be included even in the category of behema. And how do I know that? So, because Rashi tells us, Diksiv, Zos HaBehema, last Rashi on the daf, Kuftet Vavam Bet, Chaya Beklal Behema, Diksiv, Zot HaBehema Asher Tochelu. These are the animals that you can eat. The Gomer, and then the next pasuk starts the list. The Samachle, and nearby it highlights an ayal, vitzvi, v'yachmor. These are various kinds of deer species of animals. And so as a result, it shows that wild animals are included in the term behema, because the pasuk did not say zot ha-behema v'chayot asher tochelu. It just said zot ha-behema asher tochelu. These are the animals that you can eat. So as a result, the term behema includes wild animals. Okay, so the
Well, the
right.
animals such like a deer and buffalo and giraffe, they're kosher.
Correct, exactly. And so the point is that even though the psukim list them, they didn't mention the term chaya. And so that shows that behema includes even wild animals. Zecharim u'nekevos. Now we're at the top of Kuftet Zayin Amud Aleph, and we quote the next another line from the Brisa where it said that it was not only could you offer all these different species, but you could offer both male and female. Tamimim uvali mumin, and whether they were complete and had no blemish, or whether they had a blemish. The Amar Mar, it didn't make a difference. So how do we know this? Because there was another brisa that was said the following: Tamus v'zachrus bevehema, that when it comes to sacrifices, this is that when it comes to the fact that you need to have a male sacrifice, a male animal, and you need to have it be complete, meaning it can't have some kind of blemish on it. That is talking about bivehema. That is talking about when you are dealing with animals. But you know what? It does not apply in connection with birds, with fowl. Now, so that's the brisa. So the point is, now, when we had, what did we say was the pasuk that told us that you could offer every clean animal and every clean bird? It was vayikach mikol habeimah Torah mikol ha'of ha'tohor. So that pasuk, which again, this pasuk was in Perek Chet, pasuk Kaf of Bereshis, that pasuk juxtaposes the for pre a temple pre even Mishkan times, the fact that you have clean animals and clean birds. And so, what does it teach us? We connect those two, and so as a result, before unlike the brisa that we just quoted about the fact that you can have that you need tamimut with and male animals with respect to certain sacrifices in the Beis Hamikdash. That is only true when you had the Mishkan or the Beit HaMikdash, or anytime after the Mishkan, or maybe even after Har Sinai. But when it comes to before then, we would connect behema to oaf, and just as an oaf, you can use even things that have some kind of blemish, and you don't care whether it's a male bird or a female bird. So too for other animals in pre-Mishkan times. So tamimim uvali mumin. So and by the way, when we said that it needs to be unblemished and not that it could be unblemished or blemished, la puki mechusar aver delo, that it is coming to exclude a particular kind of blemish, because the blemishes that we're talking about are blemishes where all the limbs are present. But if an animal is actually missing a limb, then even in the pre-Mishkan times, you would not be able to offer it as a sacrifice. Amar Rebbe Lazar explains, Minayan l'mechusarever. How do I know that something that's missing a limb is going to be a problem? Shenesar livnei Noach, because it was prohibited to Noach. So, I'm sorry.
Like
I'm sorry. Minayan l'muchosar aver shenesar livnei Noach. How do I know that it was that something with a missing limb was prohibited to be used by bnei Noach as a sacrifice? Talmud lomar umikol hachai mikol basar. That when it talks about what is going to be brought into the ark by Noach, it refers to the everything that lives, all flesh. So what is mikol basar hinting at? It means that it's got to have all of its flesh on it. So Amra Torah, Havei v'hema shechayin rashei evarin shala. You need to bring an animal whose ends of his limbs are living. So mikol hachai umikol basar. So all of the flesh needs to be alive. So as a result, if you're missing a limb, if an animal were to be missing a limb, that animal would not be would be disqualified. V'dilma lamute trefa. Well, 1 second. Maybe this is telling us that it needs to be a non-trefa animal, not an animal that has some kind of defect. So hahu milchayos zera nafka. No, we learned that. We know that already from other words, specifically words that refer to that the purpose was to keep the children alive, meaning that there should be future generations of animals. That's why Hashem had Noach make the teva and hold all the animals. So hanich laman da'amar trefa and yoledes. Well, that works if you assume that one of the definitions of a trefa is something that's not able to have a baby. But but if you say that a trefa does have the ability to have offspring, well, then you can't use that pasuk to tell us that. So how do we know that it's not that trefa is a problem? And maybe we learn that trefa is a problem from mikol achai mikol basar, and therefore we won't have the ability to learn that something that's missing in a limb is problematic. So ha'amar kra itach. Well, when Noach was told to bring animals into the ark, he was told to bring them itach with you. So what does that imply? B'domin lach. It's supposed to be similar to you. And so, b'doma Noach ufei treifa hava. Well, 1 second. Maybe Noach himself was a treifa. And so how do you know that in fact the itach means that not a treifa? No, that can't be. Tamim ksiv bey. It says that Noach was an ish tamim. Haya b'dorosav. So of course he was not a treifa. The dilma tamim b'drachav. Maybe it means that he was good in the way he acted. No, tzaddik sivbe. It already says that when it says a tzaddik. B'dilma tamim b'drachav tzaddik l'ma'asav. Maybe what it means is that he was complete in his ways, but and righteous in his deeds. And what do we mean by ways in this context? So Rashi helps us out. So tamim b'drachav. What does it mean? Anav v'savlan. He was modest and patient, meaning these are qualities that are not about action. Meaning it was tzaddik refers to the actions that he takes, and tamim refers to the inactions, the decisions not to act. Sometimes you could decide not to act for bad reasons. And so as a result, the point is that all of his aspects of his personality were righteous. Okay, so you're right. We cannot necessarily prove that Noach was tamim, was not a treifa from the fact that it says tamim. But Isal
But
Kadai.
Anav and Savlan, that refers to patience and humility. So that's his inner character.
Correct, correct. That's the point. But the question is, why did Rashi choose specifically those items? Because, and I'm suggesting that he chose those items specifically because those items are often exemplified by choosing not to speak, not to act. And so, therefore, those are particularly good traits to choose if you're trying to distinguish traits from action. So that's my point. Okay.
But I wouldn't say inaction. You used it before, inaction. Person can, there, if he's humble and patient, it actually may be a good thing,
Of
right?
course, it's a good thing. I'm saying that the way one often exhibits patience and humility is by choosing not to act. And so the point is that that's why I'm suggesting Rashi chose the terms anav v'savlan rather than, he could have chosen chesed or rachamim or a variety of other terms that are reflective of good traits. But many of those other good traits, they're the core element of how you see them is through the person's actions. And that would, on some level, be covered by tzaddik. And so as a result, these qualities are more about the choice not to act in certain circumstances. If you don't like that explanation, you don't have to go with that explanation.
Okay.
But that's my understanding of why Rashi is choosing those terms, those qualities, as opposed to any other qualities. So back to the question. The question
You're asking
is
about Treifa, right? I mean, Noach, we asked,
the question
Noach was
is
a
about
Treifa.
Treifa. Correct.
Right.
Isn't
So
Noah
this is before Noach entered the ark, right?
correct?
Because I'm thinking that maybe, I mean, I don't know if the Gemara is going to go this way, but after Noach left the ark, there's a whole story about whether he was castrated or not. So they could have been a treifa then, right?
So that's an interesting point. First of all, you're asking an interesting question whether by definition, if he were castrated, now it does not say in the Torah that he was
I know.
castrated,
There's
but there are
Rashi,
commentaries that suggest
right,
that that was what
right.
that was what
Ham,
Tom did
right,
to him.
right,
But the bottom line is that so that's not certainly not explicit in the Torah,
right.
but we're definitely talking about before and. Tosos actually addresses the question of, well, 1 second, how could he be a treifa if in fact he lived for 300 years? And Tosos offers several different answers about it, suggesting that either a treifa for a human doesn't necessarily have the quality of dying within a year. Maybe it's because humans have a mazel that's associated with them. But you're right to raise the issue of, maybe the Torah itself highlights that he's not a treifa for other reasons. But the bottom line is that we now go back to the question of
I think
say,
he
well,
lived longer
maybe
than 300 years. I think it was about 600 or so.
no, after
Oh,
he gathered
oh,
the animals in, he
oh,
lived for
okay.
another 300. That's what I'm talking about. So the Isal Kadaitach, the Noah Gufei Trefa Havi. Well, look, if you want to tell us that Noah was in fact a trefa, that would be a problem because Mika Amr Leila Noah, does it make sense for Hashem to say to Noah to kavatach ayil that you should bring into the ark people who are like you? Shlamim lo to ayil, and you shouldn't bring in people who are unblemished, who are not trephod. That would make no sense. There's no reason for Hashem to say that. So as a result, it's not based on any pasuk that we know that Noach is not a treifa, but just the fact that God would say to bring people like you into the ark, it must mean that Noach's not a treifa, because if he were a treifa, what would be the point of God saying that you should bring in people that are like you? All right, but now you've shown that we can derive the fact that he is a non-treifa from the term itach. Why do I also need the term l'chayot zera that to promote future generations? So midetema itach, midetema itach, because what might you have said with respect to with you? Litzavta ba'alma, it just means that we don't want Noach to be alone. Afilu zakein, afilu saris, and even an older animal or a sterile animal would be sufficient. Kamash Malan, that's why it's specifically telling us that it needs to keep, that we need to say to keep seed alive, meaning that it needs to be something that can have future generations. And it's not just about company. And therefore, when it says itach, it needs to be like you, meaning like you, not a treifa.
So here the Gemara even brings the saris, castrated. It mentions this. I mean, right?
Correct. Now it's interesting because it doesn't say it almost suggests that a saris is not a treifa
Right.
Based on this because
Right.
it's not referring it's still possibly saying a treifa would not be good, but a sterile animal would be good. So that suggests that a treifa and sterility are not one and the same. Okay.
Right.
It's in fact, it goes in the opposite. And remember, we know that that's not the same because if it were the same, everybody would agree, or at least the question is whether it goes in both directions or either direction. And in one direction, one of the opinions, as we saw earlier, says that every treifa is sterile, but it seems like everybody agrees that not every sterile animal is a treifa. Okay, but now next piece of the brisa tahorin avalo tamein. You can bring clean animals, kosher animals, but not kosher animals. So umihavu tamein utahorin ba'ahi shaita. But one second, as Rashi puts it, mihavu. We're now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 lines down in the narrow lines of Rashi. Mihavu, hare lo nitna Torah. The Torah hasn't been given. So how could there be a knowledge of what is a clean or unclean animal? Now, it's interesting to note that Rashi on Torah suggests that this whole story evidences or shows that Noach studied Torah. We'll get to that in a moment. But Amar Rabbi Shmuel, Bar Nachmani, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, and we now are going to follow the Masoros Hashas and take out the words Ma'otan Shalom Ne'evda Behen Aveira, Ma'otan Ha'atiden Litaher, that in fact those it's referring to those species that would in the future be kosher. So Minahavil Yadeh, how would he know that that's the case? Kid Rav Chisda, it's like Rav Chisda, the Rav Chisda, Viran Lifnei Ateva. The animals all came in front of the ark, and sort of Noach brought them there. Kol Shateva Kolatan, and all the animals that the ark accepted into it. Biyadua shehu tahor. We would know that they are tahor. How would we know that they were tahor? Because they would come in multiples of 7. the ein tateva kolatan, and wherever the ark would not accept more than just the two, so biyadua she'ein tamein, we would know that they are unclean. I will note in this respect that there is a debate in terms of how we understand the Torah. When we say that there were two by two, does it mean two pairs of male and female, or does it mean one pair of male and female? And when we say seven, do we mean seven animals and presumably three are male and four are female? Or are we actually, or vice versa? Or are we saying no, seven male and seven female? And so that's a debate in the Mefarshim on Sefer Bereshis. And in fact, we'll see in a moment that there's a Rashi. The next Rashi may suggest that it means seven pairs and two pairs. But biyadush ein tamei, and we would know if they weren't accepted that they were not clean. Rabbi
Where does
Abahu
it say
Amar.
seven here in the Gemara?
What? It does not say seven in the Gemara. Correct. Rabbi Abahu Amar, but the question is sort of how would you know? Well, it's based on the pasuk that says that when it was for the clean animals that Noach took seven, and it says 7 7 or something along those lines, and so that's the it says of every clean animal. Well, let's get the pasuk. Let's see if it's cited here on the side. It is not. So, but the pasuk says, "Of every clean animal, take unto you seven of each, and of the animal that is not clean, two." So that's the question is how does one understand it? But in any event, let's take a look. So Rabbi Abahu Amar Amar Krav Haba'im Zachar Nekeva, and those that came, male and female, Haba'in Meilehen. That according to Rabbi Abahu, the machlokas with Rav Chisda is Noach didn't need to bring them; they just came on their own. And so Habayim Alehen, next Rashi, B'kol Otan Shebo El Teva Me'alehen, and of those who came on their own to the Teva, Bo, that they came on their own, Me'alehen Bo, they came by themselves, Ubahen, and through that Hikirotam. Shabo Shiva Shiva. If they came 7 7, now one can understand that in two ways, whether it's seven for each, or it could be in two pairs in a pair of seven, meaning seven male, seven female. Yada Shehain Torin. You would know that they are Tahor. The Shabo Shnaim Shnayim, and if they came two and two by two, which again could mean two male and two female, Shein Tamein. Well, then we would know that they were Tamei. So the bottom line is that's how we know that it means tahor animals are the clean ones and tamei ones are the non-kosher ones, and how Noach was able to figure that out without having the Torah to look in. So the question then becomes, why does Rashi, given that we've given this interpretation, why does Rashi in the Chumash say that we see from here that Noach studied Torah? And so the Hamarsha explains that yes, Noach would know something is different about the animals that came in 7 by 7. But what is different about that? And that's how come Rashi is able to say that we know that Noach studied Torah, that he was able to know that on some level there was a concept called kashrut. Okay, so Amar.
I mean, what Torah was he studying? I mean,
That's
Torah,
a good question. That is
I mean,
definitely a
even
question
Shem
for
and Aver.
beyond the Daf Yomi.
I understand
It's
that.
interesting to think about this Gemara because this is an important Gemara because we often say that the Avos kept the Torah, and here we've got a very clear Gemara that seems to be saying, of course the Avos couldn't have kept the Torah. The Torah hadn't been given. So obviously it's obvious about Noach, but the point is the same logic would apply to the Avos.
But this was Noach was before the Avot,
I know that.
and even before Shem Aver, right?
I know, I understand.
And at that time, meat wasn't permitted. It
Well,
was
no,
until
meat
after
became
the flood.
permitted after the
flood.
flood, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about after the flood. Okay. The bottom line is that that's a question way beyond the scope of our Daf Yomi Shir. So Amar Mar. So now we get the next piece. Kol karvu olos, and all they would offer are olot in shlamim lo. So are we saying that it's only olot and not shlamim? V'haksiv, 1 second. We've got a variety of psukim that suggest that there were shlamim before the Mishkan. Because, for example, in Shmo Perakav Daled Pasuk, it says V'yizbechu Zevachim Shlamim LaHashem Parim, that they slaughtered bulls to Hashem and shlamim offerings. So, as Rashi puts it, V'yizbechu Zvachim Shlamim, V'sinai Kodem Hakamas HaMishkan. This pasuk in Parakaf Daled was at Har Sinai, and Har Sinai happened before they set up the Mishkan. V'sinai Kodem Hakamas Mishkan Hava. V'at Amrat Da'ad Shelo Hukam Hamishkan lo kirvu shlamim klal. And you just said that before they set up the Mishkan, there were no shlamim. So ella ema lekol karvu olos. No, you're right. What we really need to say, and now this is following the Shita Mikubetzis' edits, look lakol karvu olos. When we're talking about everybody, meaning Jews and non-Jews, everybody could offer olot. However, when it comes to, and again, the Shita Mekubetzes adds, V'livnei Noach, and taking out the language that's in brackets, V'livnei Noach, olot in shlamim lo. But when it comes to the children of Noach, that they would not be able to offer shlamim, they would only be able to offer olot. As Rashi puts it, lakol bein li Yisrael bein livnei Noach. When it comes to whoever can offer an ola, that means we're talking about everybody. Karvu olot. Aval shlamim. When it comes to the shlamim, lo karvu b'nei Noach. That would not be brought by the children of Noach. Umishas matan Torah. And the point is that from the giving of the Torah, we were no longer b'nei Noach. Shenivcharu Yisrael karvu lahem shlomim. That's when the Jewish people were chosen, and that's when shlomim began. So as a result, there were no shlomim prior to the Har Sinai.
And when the Har Sinai, now haven't we learned? I mean, I think it's a Masorah that they didn't know the laws of kashrut. That's why when the Torah was given, they ate milk, right?
Correct.
So that's
Correct.
so when exactly did they bring Zevachim al bamod b'zmeach?
So that is this citation, right, is from Parakav Daled, which is after the Aseret HaDibrot. So as a result, that's when, right, the reason that one of the many reasons that we eat dairy and on Shavuot is because only on Shavuot itself, only the morning of Shavuot, when we got the Aseret HaDibros and the rest of the Torah, at least according to Rabbi Akiva, as we saw yesterday, that's when we learned about all of these other mitzvot, and so that's the concept of having milk. And then meat. And so the point is these olot and shlamim that were offered in Parakav Daled would, according to this view, be offered after the Aseret HaDibros, and so therefore it's not a problem. It's after we got the Torah.
Right.
So Command Amar Lo Karvu Shlamim B'nei Noach, and this follows the viewpoint that says that shlamim were not offered by B'nai Noach to Itmar, because we have the following debate: Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, Chad Amar Karvu Shlamim B'nai Noach, V'Chad Amar Lo Karvu. One says that they brought the children of Noach did bring shlamim, and one says that they did not. And so this is following the opinion that says that they did not. So my time a demand to Amar Karvu Shlamim B'nai Noach. Well, 1 second. What's the basis for these two different opinions? Why would I think that B'nai Noach did offer shlamim? Diksiv, because we have the following pasuk: the Hevel, when it came to Hevel, the son of Adam, Hevi Gamhu, he also brought offerings to God. Mibechorot sono umilchel vehen. He brought from the firstborn of his flock and from their fats. Now, Ezahu davar shechelbo karev legabe mizbeach ve'ein kulo karev legabe mizbeach. What sacrifice has only the fats being brought and not the entire animal? Havi Omer Zeh Shlamim. That's a Shlamim. And so it must be that Hevel was bringing Shlamim. So my time of demand Amar Lo Karbu. Well, one second. And what's the scriptural source for the opinion that Bnei Noach did not offer it? So did not offer Shlamim, and we'll see how does he address Hevel in a moment. Diksiv Uri Tzafon Uvoi Teman. Well, there's a pasuk in Yeshaya, I'm sorry, in Shir Hashirim, excuse me, that says that wake up, O north, and come, O south. Now, Uri can mean wake up, but it could also mean agitated in a bad way. And so as a result, the suggestion is Tisna'er Uma Shema'aseh B'Tzafon. The nations that do things only in the north, namely, they only offer olot, meaning every nation other than the Jewish people, those nations, they should be agitated when in the future when the redemption comes. V'tavo umam shemasa b'tzafon uvadarom, and the people of the Jewish people who do things both in the north and in the south, because we offer both olot and shlamim, we should come back to our homeland. As Rashi puts it, Uma shemaset tzafon v'darom dahainu Yisrael. That's the Jewish people. Shemakrivin olos u'shlamim, because we offer both olot and shlamim. So Umar nami haksiv umechel vehen. But 1 second, how can you say that they didn't bring shlamim when it says with respect to Hevel and their fats? So doesn't that indicate that they brought shlamim where only the fats were burned and not the rest of the animal? No, mishmeinem didahu. It means from the fattest of the animals. That's how he chose. He chose the best of the animals, just as Bichorot implies the best because they're the eldest. So too the choicest, the fattest. He was just trying to choose the best of the best. Umar Nami Haksiv Uri Tzafon. Well, 1 second. What about the opinion that understands Michal Behen as indicating Shlamim? How does he address the pasuk in Shir Hashirim that it suggests that in fact there's distinction between Jews and non-Jews, with the non-Jews only in the north and the Jews everywhere? No, that's a totally misunderstanding what that pasuk is talking about. Ahu b'kibbutz galuyos hu diksiv. It's talking about the ingathering of all the Jewish people, and it's saying if you're in the north, wake up and come to Israel, and if you're in the south, come to Israel. Wherever you are, come to Israel. So that's the point, as Rashi says, b'kibbutz galiyot v'hachi kamar. And this is what it's saying. Uri ruach tzifonis, wake up, people in the north. Uboi ruach dromis, and come, people in the south. L'kabetz galiyot, for the joining, for the gathering of the ingathering of the exiles, hamifusaros bachem, that are spread out amongst you. So that's the point that is trying to be said by that pasuk. It has nothing to do with karbanot. V'haksiv, 1 second. How can you tell me that shlamim were not offered by Bnei Noach? Because what are we going to see in a couple weeks? We're going to see Vayomer Moshe gamatati tein biyadenu zvachim va'olot v'asinu la'Hashem Elokeinu, that Moshe, in response to Paro, says, not only are we going to bring our animals, but you're going to give us animals so that we can bring Zvachim and Olot. Well, 1 second. What are Zvachim in this context? Zvachim, presumably, Zvachim va'olot, Rashi, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're now from the bottom of Rashi, about 20 lines up. Zvachim va'olot, Zvachim hainu shlamim. That's the Zvachim that's referred to in that pasuk, where are presumably Shlamim. The Kodem Matan Torah Kulo B'nai Noach. And before Matan Torah, we were all B'nai Noach. So even if you were to say, well, the Jewish people were going to bring it, but we were still B'nai Noach. So again, this is a very important Rashi in the context of the question of sort of when did the Jewish people really start, and the question of is Abraham the first Jew or not, or really were the first Jews those who stood at Har Sinai. So clearly,
but didn't they take the lamb that they took the Pesach lamb, tied it to the bed, and they shechted it, right? Wasn't
well, that
that
was a
before
korban.
Matan Torah?
That was a Korban Pesach, and they were explicitly instructed. So you're right to ask that question because, after all, a Pesach at other times of year would be considered a Shlomim.
Right.
Clearly, that's got to be that was just a Xeris Hakasuv, and you can't tell anything from that particular offering. And it doesn't, and of course, it wasn't actually a shlomim. And
I
again, as
understand.
we've said before, a Pesach has a communal element to it. So communal sacrifices might have different rules that are associated with it.
But
But
nonetheless, it still was a korban. It was a sacrifice.
correct, 100%, 100%.
But
But this is
you want to
talking
say
about
you
the
want to say it's like
context. The context of this statement of Olot and in Shlomim Lo is about voluntary offerings,
uh-huh.
and that was not a voluntary
You
offering.
could also
So
say it's a hora'at sha'ah, maybe.
yes, 100%. That absolutely. Zvachim. So what's the answer? What does it mean by zvachim in that pasuk? No, it means zvachim la'achila. Zvachim are supposed to be eaten. So it meaning that it's just regular slaughtered food, as Rashi says. Continuing on in that same Rashi, there's no separate divrei hamaskal, but there's a period at least in my Rashi. Umishani, and we answer zvachim einan shlamim. Zvachim does not mean shlamim. El lashon shchita ba'alma v'la'achila. It means just slaughtering. So zvachim is Moshe is saying to Paro, you're going to give us animals to eat, and you're going to give us so many animals that we don't even just have to eat them, but rather we can slaughter them as sacrifices. So the olos lahakrava, and the olot are being brought for to be sacrificed. So no proof from here that anybody who was bnei Noach was offering shlamim.
Does Rashi sort of disagree? I mean, is he changed? First of all, he says Zvachim hainu shlamim. V'kol matan Torah kula b'nei Noach. And then he says
Yeah,
Mishkani
that's
Zvachim
the
eina
Hava Amina.
shlamim.
That's the Hava Amina. The Hava Amina of the question is Zvachim Hainu Shlamim, that maybe the Zvachim are the Shlamim, and that shows that Shlamim were offered by Bnei Noach. And Umushani, and continuing on in that same Rashi, Umushani Zvachim Einan Shlamim. Then the answer is that no, Zvachim are not Shlamim.
Uh-huh.
Elo Lashon Shchita. It's just the language of slaughtering. And so as a result, that's the answer. So Vahaksiv, 1 second. What about when Yisro came to see Moshe immediately before? This is Perik Yud Chet of Shmot. So a couple parshiot away from now. Vayikach Yisro Chosein Moshe Ola Uzvachim. And there, it can't mean, it's got to mean Zvachim are sacrifices, because the next word is La Hashem, for God. So clearly, it's got to be about sacrifices. No, lahahu laachar matan Torahu diksiv. That was really happened after the giving of the Torah. Now, this is an interesting debate because the question of when did Yisro come? Did Yisro come after Har Sinai? And the story was moved to before Har Sinai, and there are a number of reasons why that are offered. For example, maybe we wanted to distinguish between Amalek, which are terrible non-Jews, and the fact that Yisro is a very wonderful non-Jew. Maybe you wanted to. So that's one reason. A variety of reasons that are given as to why the story would be moved, but the bottom line is this is following the perspective of that it was given after the Matan Torah. So Hanich Lamanda Amar, as so the Gemara now asks that exact question. Hanich Lamanda Amar Yisro Achar Matan Torah Hayat. That works according to the opinion that Yisro happened after the giving of the Torah. Elamanda Amar Yisro Kodem Matan Torah Hayat. What my Ikulamemar? What do you say? De'idmar b'nei Rabbi Chia v'Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Chad amar Yisro kodem matan Torah haya, v'chad amar Yisro achar matan Torah haya. So how do we answer that? So Laman Amar Yisro kodem matan Torah haya, kasaver shlamim kikriva b'nei Noach. So according to the person who says that Yisro happened before the giving of the Torah, you'd have to say that in fact people b'nei Noach were able to offer shlamim. Tanai, and this is a debate among Tanaim. Vayishma Yisro Chohen Mijan. What did Yitro hear that he came to visit Moshe? So Mashmua Shama Uva Viniskayer. What did he hear that he then came and converted to Judaism? Rabbi Yeshua Omer Milchemes Amalek Shama. He heard the war with Amalek, and so according to this opinion, the giving of the Torah hadn't happened. Sharei Ksiv Bitzido, because it says next to it, Vayachalosh Yoshua es Amalek ves Amol Ficharv, and Yoshua defeated the Amalek and and its people with the sword, with the blade of the sword. So Rabbi Elazar Hamodai Amar Matan Torah Shama. Uva, he heard about the giving of the Torah. So clearly, according to this opinion, the Torah had already been given, and this area of the Torah is out of order. Kishenitna Torah li Yisrael hayakolo holik u'misov ha'olam va'ad sofo. That the sound of the God went from one end to the other. But kol malchei ovdei kochavim achazasan ra'ada b'hechalehen, and they were all trembling in their palaces. The Amru Shira, and they began to sing. Shneamar uvehechalo kulo omer kavod. They all proclaimed God's glory. V'nis kabtsu kulam etzel bilam harasha. They all came to Bilam the Rasha. Ma kol ha'amona asher shamanu shema mabo bala olam. What is this sound that we heard? Is there going to be another flood? Shenamar Hashem lemabol yashab. This is all based on a drasha of the psukim in Tehillim Perek Kaftet. So Amar Lahem Vayeshev Hashem Melech Laolam. No, Hashem is sits enthroned as king forever. Kvar nishba HaKadosh Baruch Hu she'enu maybe mabul olam. He's not going to bring another flood to the world. Amrulo, so they said to him, Mabul shal mayim eino mavi, aval mabul shal eish, maybe he could bring a flood of fire. Shneamar ki ba'eish Hashem nishbat, that Hashem judges with fire. Amar lehen kvar nishba she'enu mashas kol basar. Hashem is sworn not to destroy all of humanity. Uma kol ha'amon hazeh sheshamanu. So what's this big noise that we heard? So Amar lahem chemda tova yesh lo beveis genazav. Hashem had a great treasure. Shahaisa genuza et slow. Tough kuf ayin dalid dorod kodem shenivra ha'olam. It was something that was 974 generations before the creation of the world. Uvikesh litnav levanav, and Hashem wanted to give it to his children. Shnamar Hashem oz liamo yitain. Hashem gave might to the people, to his nation. Miyad pasku kulam amru Hashem yivarechas hamo b'shalom. That Hashem should bless his nation with peace. And so when we say Hashem oz liamo yitain, Hashem yivarechas hamo b'shalom, this Shabbos and every day when we say it, if you say Pitom Ketores, so you should have in mind the thought that this is that this is a response of the world to hearing that Hashem has given us the Torah, is that Hashem should bless us with peace. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Kriyas Yamsu Shama Uva. Now, what they heard is neither of the above. Yisro heard about the splitting of the Red Sea. Shneamar Vayihikish Shmoa Kol Malchei HaAmori. And it was when all the Amorite kings heard Va'af Rachab Hazona Amra L'Shluchei Yoshua. And similarly, Rachab said to the messengers that Yoshua sent in the beginning of Sefer Yoshua, Ki shamanu es asher hovish Hashem es mei Yamsuf, that we heard that Hashem dried up the sea of Yamsuf. So my shna hasam de amar v'lo hayavam od ruach. Well, one second. We have two psukim that talk about the people hearing about the Yamsuf, and the reactions are slightly different. In one, it says that there was no longer spirit within them. And then in the other, umayshna hacha dekamar v'lo kama od ruach beish, that there was not remained any spirit erect in a man. And so what does that mean? So as we turn to Kaf Tav Zayin Amabet, we say da'afilu akashuye nami lo akshu, that when it came to the story where Rachav was talking, it means that they were not able to get hard. Umana yada, how did Rachav know that they weren't able to have an erection? To Amar Mar, ein lecha kol sar v'nagid shelo ba al Rachav hazona, that Rachav was actually a prostitute and everybody wanted her. Amru bas yud shanim haisa sheyatzulu Yisrael mitzrayim v'zansa kol mem shana shehayu Yisrael b'midbar, that those 40 years that they were in the wilderness, she was served as a prostitute. Achar nun shana niskaira, and after that she became a convert. Amra Yehei Macholi. It should be forgiven to me. B'schar chevel chalonu pishtim. Through the rope and the window and the flax, where I hid them and allowed them to escape. And those same things were the basis of how Rashi explained, citing the Mechilta, that those were the same basis for how she also engaged in her prostitution. That people would come up on the rope, go in through the window, and hide from others in the flax. Amar Mar v'ovdei kochavim bismana zeh rishon lasos came, that today idolaters are allowed to do this same service, namely an Ola service. Mina hanimili. How do I know that? The Tana Rabbanan. Well, we have a brisa that tells us that. Daber el, and then the pasuk continues. El Aharon, the El Banav, the El Kol Bnei Yisrael. So what is it? What are we taught? Why speak to the children of Israel? Bnei. Why is it that mentioned? It could have just told us that he was speaking to Aaron and his sons, and we would know that, of course, everybody else knew as well. The point is, Bnei Yisrael mitzuvin al shchutei chutz. Only the Jewish people are commanded with respect to slaughtering outside the Beis HaMikdash. And because this pasuk is Vayikra Perek Yud Zayin pasuk bet, and as we've seen throughout much of the last couple parakim, Perek Yud Zayin is all about bringing sacrifices outside of the Beis HaMikdash. So that's who was commanded. The non-Jews are not commanded that way. Those non-Jews are able to build their own altar, and they can offer whatever they want on it. Amarav Yaakov bar Acha Amarav Asi Asr L'Seyan Shlichasan. While they can do it, we can't help them or act as their agents. Amarabba ula orinhu lahu sharik. But we can give instructions. Kihada Ifra's Hormiz, like the case of Ifra Hormiz, Imei de Shvur Malka, who was the mother of Shavar Malka, the king Shapur, who was not Jewish. Shadra Korban ala Rava. She sent a sacrifice to Rava. Shalchale, so he sent it. And she sent it with the following message, saying, offer it up for Hashem. Amar lahu, l'Rav Safra, l'Rav Acha Barhuna. So Rava says to Rav Safra and Rav Acha, Zilu the Dabru Trey Ulme Golai. Go talk to two people of the world of the same age. And Rashi clarifies, what is this talking about? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines down. Zilu dibru train ulme gilai. L'chu ukechu shnei ovdei kuchavim. Go get two idolaters, bachurim, young people, b'nei geil, echad. They're one age, meaning that they should look similar. Shekein noi ledavar, because the two of them working together will look nice. So the idea is that this should be a nice thing. And go see a place where the sea has thrown up some of its sand, because that would be a place that has never been threshed and never been used. Ushkulu tzivei chadte, and go get some new wood. Va'apik nura mimara chadta, and go get new steel to as flint to start the fire. Va'askua niale l'shem shemayim, and then have them offer it up for the sake of heaven. So Amar le Abaye, Kiman, who is this like? Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua. It's like Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua. Titania, Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua, Omer, Mam is be'ach shelo yishtamish bohed. The altar itself can't be anything that people have used before. That's why it needed to be new sediment that was thrown up by the sea. And it also has to be wood that was never used. However, although Rava asked for new wood, it's actually a Rabbi Elazar, and he seemed to be following Rabbi Elazar. It's not totally, because Rabbi Elazar agreed that when it came to a bama, you didn't need new wood. Titania, Kazuv Echad Omer, V'itain David Larnan b'makom shikle zahav mishkal sheish meot, Uksiv Vayikem David es hagoren ves habakar b'chesev shkalim chamishim. So one place it says with respect to buying Yerushalayim that it was 600 gold shekel, and in one place it was 50 shekel. So said, how do we resolve this? So Govim Mikol Shevet V'Shevet Chamishim. So he took 50 from everyone. Shehain Sheish Meot, and that gets you to 600. Now, if you're thinking, well, I don't understand because the 50 were a silver and the 600 were gold, you're okay. We're going to get there. Rabbi Omer Mishum Abba Yossi ben Dustai Bakar Ve'etzim Umakom Mizbeach Benun. So now what a different answer. It wasn't 50 from every shevet, but rather 50 was about the cattle, the wood, and the place of the altar itself. And the kol habayis kulo b'sheish meot, and the entire rest of the Temple Mount, that was 600. Rabbi Lazar ben Shamua Omer Bakar ve'etzim. This is based on Rashi. We'll take out of the Umakom Mizbeach, because otherwise it would be the identical answer to what Rebbe said. So Binun, so the cattle and the wood was purchased for 50. The Kol Habayis Kulo b'Sheish Meot, and again the entire rest of the house was for 600. Diksiv Bayomer Arvana El David Yikach v'Ya'al Adoni HaMelech Hatov Be'inav Re'ei HaBakar LaOla V'Hamorgim Uchlei HaBakar LaEtzim. So now this is the proof. This is the proof that you can use used wood for the altar when it comes to a bama, because Arvana tells David that you should take whatever's best, and you can take the cattle for an ola, and the morigim, which we're going to see are made out of wood, and the clay habakar, and the vessels that are used for the cattle, laitzim, you could use that as wood, and presumably these are used items. Rava Amarlach, Rava would say to you, these were not used items. Hasam nami b'chadte, the things that he used, the cattle gear and the morigim were new. So my morigim. So you're probably wondering, as I was at the time, what are these morigim? Amar ula shel turbel. Mita shel turbel. It's a bed of turbel. Now, what is my mita shel turbel? That does, A is equal to B, but we don't know what B is either. So Amar Abaye, Iza de kurkasa de daishan deshai. It's an Iza de kurkasa, which are used to thresh things, meaning it's to thresh things really, really well. So thankfully, Rashi tells us what Iza de Korkasa is. Obviously, I have the English as well, but it's nice to see how it gets there. Kimin ez shel eitz. It's something that is shaped like a goat and made out of wood. V'yesh bo yitidot chadim. And it has lots of posts on it. It's got lots of spikes. And so as a result...
I think they translate in the Chumash as pegs.
Pegs, yeah, pegs, exactly. So here we're 100%. I mean, but pegs can be spikes. But these are clearly sharp, pointy things because they are being used to thresh the threshed. And so that's what, and how do I know? So Amar Abaye Ma'ikra, what's the verse that shows that my source is correct? Hine samtich lemorag charutz chadash bal pifios. I'm making you, the Jewish people, like a sharp morag with many sharp edges, and you're going to thresh the mountains and grind them small. And so that's that is the context. And so as a result, that's it shows that the moreg is a made out of wood thing. And so these things could have been used, and Rava tells us, no, they weren't used. And so as a result, that was Rava's response to the question that was asked that suggested where Abaye wondered, didn't Rebbe Lazar seem to change his mind and say that you could use used wood on a bama? So Makre le Rava libre, Rava had told this all over to his son. V'rami kroyadadi, and he posted the questions of two psukim that seem to contradict. Ksiv vayitin David la'arnan, uksiv vayikin David, right? The 500, the 50, and the 600, or the 600 and the 50. Ha ketzad, how do we understand it? And he gave that same answer that we gave at the beginning. Gova mikol shevet v'shevet chamishin, shehein sheish meyot. And he gave 50 from each, and so that gave you 600. V'akati kashana adadi, but 1 second, there's still a contradiction. Hasam kesef hacha zahav. You have, when it comes to the 50, it was silver. And when it came to the 600, it's gold. Gold is worth more than silver. So ela hachi kamar. Gova kesef. B'mishkal sheish me'od zahav. No, the total amount of silver that was accumulated was worth 600 zahav. And so when we say that he gathered 50 shekel and it was of silver, what it means is that he gathered 50 shekel of gold worth of silver. So he gathered enough silver that it would be worth 50 shekel of gold, and so that's why the 50 shekel times 12 equals 600.
But
Okay.
but it says 600 shekels of gold, 600 gold, right?
Correct. So the question is, sorry for not scrolling, how do we get one from the other? Because if you did 50 shekel of silver from each tribe times 12, that's 600 shekel of silver. That's worth a lot less than 600 shekel of gold. So what we're doing is we're reinterpreting the verse that where it references the 50 shekel of silver. And what we're saying, what it means is that when it says David purchased the threshing floor and the cattle for silver 50 shekels, it means for silver he acquired it, and the amount was 50 shekels worth of gold. So he used silver, but he was paying a price of 50 shekel of gold. And so as a result, the 50 shekel of gold was 50 shekel of made out of silver that is equal to the value of 50 shekel of gold. So it was way more than 50 shekel of silver. Maybe it was, I think the Gemara often elsewhere says that the ratio is something like 25 to 1. So 50 times 25, what is that, 1,250 or something like that. So that would be the amount of shekel of silver that he actually acquired from each tribe, and that would aggregate up to a total value of 600 shekel of gold. All right, so we didn't quite get as far as I would have liked. I apologize again for not scrolling. Let me just scroll slowly through this. But we will pick up, given the hour, we will pick up from there, God willing, tomorrow.
So 50 shekel of silver is equal to 600 shekel of gold. Is that the bottom line?
No, God forbid you should say that. No, absolutely not. What I'm saying is that they paid an amount of silver that was worth 50 shekel of gold. So when we read the pasuk, and the pasuk said again, "Vayikin David is gahagorim v'esabakar bekesef shkalim chamishim." So what it means is he bought it with silver, and it was silver that was worth 50 shekel of gold. So it was way more than 50 shekel weight of silver. It was a lot more than that because it was worth 50 shekel of gold. And now when you take that and multiply by 12, now you get to the 600 shekel of gold and we get this first answer of the Bryce. Again, there were three different answers that the Bryce offered, but according to the first answer, where the 50 is that what he collected from every Shevet, it doesn't mean that he collected 50 shekel of silver, but rather he collected silver worth 50 shekel of gold. And so that's how you would get the 50 times 12 is equal to 600 shekel of gold.
And he connected that from each tribe. So
and
that's
he
600.
collected that from each tribe. Obviously, not from the tribe of Levi, because that's, again, usually when the Jewish people are counted for things like this, it doesn't include the Shevet Levi, and so it was 12 times 50. 12 times 50 is 600.
Right.
Okay. All right. So we will pick up from the two dots, God willing, tomorrow. Looking forward to continuing our learning together. We now get back to our original Mishnah, and there isn't as much. This was a little bit of a Gadita today, but we get back to some of the halachot associated with the korbanot, God willing, tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.